2020. For the first time in over 40 years, France experienced a per capita recession. The result? French wages declined to levels not seen since 2015. Even with challenges like protest, the COVID-19 pandemic, and lockdowns, when polled, there was a problem that affected the French more than anything else: the cost of living. Over the last few decades, France has experienced one of the greatest housing booms this world has ever seen. Since the late 1990s, house prices in French cities have increased by over 200%, and Paris is now the 7th most unaffordable place to live in the world. How and why did we end up here? This is the dark side of France. France is one of the most beautiful places in the entire world, often known as a land of art, culture, and fine dining. The country looks like a paradise, but if you want to live here, it's easier said than done. To purchase the median home in Nice, a family must earn at least $120,000 annually. In Paris, that figure rises to $150,000 each year. Compare this to the median household income in both cities of around $40,000. It becomes clear that home ownership is far out of reach for the majority of French residents. Now, some might argue that this is only an issue in Paris or Nice, but that's just not the case. Since 2020, house prices in cities like Lyon, Marseille, and Toulouse have increased by over 30%, while wages only grew by 16%. Home ownership is becoming less and less attainable for many French residents, especially young people.
Honte à la France, honte à Macron, honte à ce gouvernement qui nous écrase.
Young people have not had the luxury to benefit from skyrocketing home values and are constantly playing catch-up. The result? Home ownership rates for people under 30 have declined nearly 25%. But what if you only want to rent? Surely you can find a decent place to rent. Unfortunately, no. The median rent in Paris is more than $3,000 per month, with Nice not far behind at $1,500. Historically, French rental rates increased at a reasonable amount per year. However, since 2020, annual rental rates have increased by over 3% per year. People are caught between a rock and a hard place, trying to pay 2025 rental prices with 2010 wages. And this would all be fine and dandy if people could find a place to live. But the demand for rental units is insatiable. Every rental unit application is met with dozens, if not hundreds, of competing applications. And at the end of the day, renters aren't fighting for anything beyond a place to live, a place to sleep, and a place to call home. Hard-working, honest French citizens are left feeling hopeless as the dream of working hard to achieve a nice life gradually fades. All of this begs the question, why is real estate out of control? The first culprit that many point to is immigration. Recently, the government said the migration system is broken and needs a massive overhaul. From 2022 to 2023, France issued approximately 2.4 million visas, marking a 40.4% increase from the previous year. To put things into perspective, that's more immigrants than any year in modern French history, and 800,000 more than pre-COVID levels. This massive increase in immigration is straightforward. Greater demand with the same housing supply equals higher prices. In particular, researchers in economics think that the main effect of immigration has been on rental housing. In France, the majority of immigrants are on temporary visas, and between 60 and 70% of them rent a property, particularly in Paris. This influx has intensified competition for housing, especially in urban centers like Paris and Lyon, where rental prices have risen notably. In some neighborhoods, rents have increased by up to 50 to 20% over the past year. Additionally, immigrants often share accommodations to manage costs, outbidding locals and contributing to higher rental yields in certain areas. But what about housing? There's little evidence to support the claim that immigrants are the main cause of rising housing costs. Actually, over the past 10 years, France's migration rate has declined. It is now consistent with historical trends. However, over recent years, there has been a key difference in France's housing market. While immigration continues to rise, the number of new housing units being constructed has not kept up with demand.
Autre fléau qui aggrave la précarité dans notre pays, la crise aiguë du logement que nous traversons depuis quelques années.
In 2023, only around 350,000 homes were completed, one of the lowest figures in recent history. At the same time, France saw its highest immigration rates in decades, putting immense pressure on an already strained housing market. So what gives? Since the early 2000s, the number of residences built in relation to France's population has been declining. In particular, after 2010, construction rates saw a sharp decline, leading to a growing supply shortage that continues to affect the housing market today. One of the main culprits for France's housing challenges is its high population density. Cities like Paris are extremely densely populated, which has made it difficult to build enough housing to meet demand, especially in major urban areas. For example, Paris has about 21,000 people per square kilometer. Compare this to 6,000 in London, 4,000 in Munich, and 3,600 in Amsterdam. It is a shocking difference when compared to other major Western cities. France, especially in cities like Paris, is one of the most densely populated countries in Europe. It is a shocking difference. Despite the high population density in cities like Paris, France's housing market is also affected by restrictive urban planning policies. The amount of land available for new construction is frequently restricted by zoning rules and regulations designed to maintain the historic identity of French cities. This includes laws that protect green areas and architectural heritage, as well as limitations on the height and style of new construction. As a result, these regulations restrict the construction of new homes, worsening the already severe shortages. According to recent reports, only around 350,000 new homes were built in France in 2023, a number far below the estimated demand, which has been growing steadily due to urban migration. In comparison, Germany managed to build nearly 400,000 new homes in the same year, despite similar population pressures. This significant difference highlights how difficult it is for France to meet its housing needs, particularly in its densest regions like Paris and Lyon. Okay, we can all agree that immigration and low development rates are worsening France's housing crisis. But there is another critical factor at play: tax incentives. In 2014, the French government introduced the Pinel law to encourage people to invest in rental properties. Investors who purchased new or refurbished real estate and lease it for at least 6 years were eligible for substantial tax incentives under this rule. Investors received up to 21% of the property's value in tax reductions, which means that for a property worth 200,000 euros, they could get up to 42,000 in tax savings. In 2017, the government considered changing the Pinel law due to concerns that it was making housing more expensive. They wanted to limit the tax benefits and restrict the types of properties that could qualify. But these changes faced strong opposition and the law stayed mostly the same, continuing to provide tax incentives to investors. This policy has been criticized because it's making housing even less affordable for many people. Instead of lowering rent, it's attracting more investors to buy properties in busy cities, which raises prices. For example, the average rent in Paris in 2023 was over 1,500 euros per month, while the average salary was around 2,200, making it hard for most people to afford to live there. Even though the law was meant to increase the number of rental properties, it ended up benefiting investors more than regular people. Many families struggled to find affordable places to rent or buy, especially in popular cities like Paris, Lyon, and Marseille. The Pinel laws made it harder for those who need homes the most, as investors are often competing with them for the same properties. But that isn't all. There's more. The Pinel law is part of a broader trend of policies that prioritize property investors over regular citizens. While the law has spurred some construction and rental activity, it has also created a market where real estate is seen as a secure investment, inflating property prices. In fact, according to the National Institute of Statistics and Economic Studies, between 2010 and 2020, property prices in Paris rose by approximately 60%, while wages only grew by about 12%.
Qu'est-ce que vous pensez des prix des loyers à Paris?
Ça dépend, exorbitant en vrai. En vrai, déjà ça dépend les quartiers parce que t'as des différences de dingue en vrai, mais exorbitant.
This widening gap between income growth and property values is a major factor in the affordability crisis. The rise in property prices has particularly affected young people and first-time buyers. Many are now finding it increasingly difficult to enter the housing market, especially in major cities like Paris. In 2023, the average price for a first-time buyer's apartment in the capital was 5,500 euros per square meter, compared to 3,800 per square meter in 2015. This sharp increase in property values, combined with a stagnated wage growth, has made home ownership an unattainable goal for many young professionals and families. In fact, the median age of first-time homebuyers in Paris has risen to 38 years old in 2023, up from 33 years old just a few years prior. As a result, younger generations are often stuck renting or living with family members well into their 30s, creating a cycle of instability and uncertainty in the housing market. Furthermore, the concentration of investment in already expensive areas has created a ripple effect in surrounding regions. Cities like Lyon, Bordeaux, and Marseille have seen significant increases in property prices as investors seek to expand their portfolios outside of Paris. In Bordeaux, for example, rents have risen by 20% over the past 5 years, while wages have only gone up by 7%. As a result, there's now more competition for the available housing, which raises prices for locals. Many people are being priced out of their own communities, and middle-class folks who are left behind by the surge of investor activity feel as though they will never be able to achieve their goal of homeownership. As the economist Charles Munger wisely stated, "Show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome." Here, the French government has created an environment where property investment is heavily incentivized. The incentive? Invest in real estate and hold on to it for tax breaks. The outcome? A deeply unfair economic system. I can already imagine the comments on this video blaming political parties for France's housing crisis. And while it might be easy to single out a particular government, the reality is that this problem has persisted for decades. Under the leadership of François Mitterrand, housing prices rose steadily, but the economy also saw substantial growth and development. His policies focused on social housing and urban renewal. However, when Nicolas Sarkozy took office, housing prices surged dramatically, the largest increase in modern French history. During his tenure, housing prices more than doubled in many urban areas, especially in Paris. Then the Socialist Party had several opportunities to address the issue, but housing prices continued to rise, only slowing temporarily during the global financial crisis. Following this, the center-right government took over. Nicolas Sarkozy, strike. François Hollande, strike. Emmanuel Macron, strike. And yet housing prices remain out of control. With Emmanuel Macron in charge, the decade ends with a dramatic surge in housing prices. If you bought a home in 1992 for 200,000 euros, it would now be worth 480,000. However, if you were born after 1992, home ownership might be out of reach and could remain so for a long time. This situation isn't solely the result of political parties or short-term trends. France's housing crisis runs deep and is beyond simple solutions. What will it take to resolve it? The answer lies in incentivizing business investment, lowering income taxes for hardworking French citizens, reforming the penal law to ensure it serves the public good, increasing housing construction, and reducing bureaucratic hurdles to facilitate development. Moreover, it requires a population of educated French citizens who can hold politicians accountable. The solution starts with policy, and you, the citizen, have the power to shape it. For more economics and housing analysis, subscribe to Native.